First of all, let us take your comments on the role a lot of Nigerians saw the Nigerian judiciary play in the 2023 presidential election. What do you think about that?
Thank you very much, Dan, for inviting me to this program. I respect and value your channel so much, and I'm really honored to be here. And let me say, without any doubt, that as a lawyer, I'm not a very proud or very happy with the Judiciary Day. I'm not level like our profession and the entire system of administration of justice has been brought to. I'm not proud of what we are. I'm not proud of what the Nigerian public seems to think of the judiciary. It's not a day, this is not a time you are happy to be introduced at a wedding as a lawyer. And I'm saying this with every sense of decorum and respect to the members of the Nigerian Bar Association.
Our listeners may be wondering, apart from this general view of Nigerian judiciary, is there a particular aspect that actually you feel does not sit down well with you? Or is there a particular judgment you have in mind that does not sit down well with you? Or a particular reasoning in a judgment that does not sit down well with you?
Well, I am involved in a couple of the cases. And I would say, a number of the decisions that have cropped up are completely unsupportable from the history, from what the lawyers would say, from precedents, even from the Supreme Court. You cannot find justification for some of the decisions. You cannot justify the conflicting decisions, for instance, of the appeal in one jurisdiction, saying very clearly that some issues are clearly pre-election issues and should not be brought before the election tribunal. While in another jurisdiction of the same court, ordinary jurisdiction, you find the same court assuming jurisdiction over those matters and making very dangerous decisions based on the understanding of the issues.
For Mr. Jacobs, for giving us a brief overview of the problems you have witnessed in your 30-year practice as a lawyer, senior lawyer based in Nigeria. So let's not just limit ourselves to the problems. Do we see a way that we start at least to tackle some of these problems? What do you think?
For me, the Supreme Court has a very big opportunity to correct all the wrongs that have been placed on the Nigerian population. The Supreme Court has a unique opportunity to make things go right, because, like I said from the beginning, I'm not happy. I'm not at all happy that I'm a lawyer today, because several things are wrong. Several decisions cannot be justified. Several opinions expressed by our respected justices cannot. Look, I'm summarizing it. The Supreme Court all the wrong decisions can be corrected. All the decisions make sense to the common man can be corrected. And it is the Supreme Court of Nigeria that has a responsibility of making the judiciary to become respected, to restore the judiciary and make it the hallowed, respected system that the common man should live in. The Supreme Court has a rare opportunity setting everything aright. Look, when you go to some states like Nasarawa and you see people, ordinary human beings, women and children demonstrating every day, you know that there is something wrong. If you go to the Supreme Court of Nigeria, has a duty, has a Herculean task, which to me is very simple, because they have set the precedents in their previous decisions as regards elections. There is no way pre-election matters should come and take center stage at tribunals. Election tribunals are to address election issues, not pre-election matters like we have in Plateau State, where you are talking of structures of a political party or whether this. Look, those are things the court itself has settled long before now, that election tribunals do not have jurisdiction to dwell on such matters. And then you have situations where the Nigerian public is speaking. My life, we are seeing a situation where the common man is talking about the Supreme Court or talking about the Court of Appeal. Truly, for some of us, we have defended the judiciary. We have said, look, most of the issues that bring the judiciary to disrepute are largely political cases. Over 70% of all the other judicial issues are taken care of by magistrates, by high courts, and nobody knows about them. So we must respect the labor and the work that is put into the system by magistrates, by high court judges, and other courts. So, but the few cases that get into the limelight because of elections bring the judiciary to disrepute, bring disrespect, bring a lot of rancor and insults on the judiciary. And for me, I don't have any other profession. I don't have any job besides being a lawyer. So I feel highly traumatized that the only institution that gives me joy and from which I sustain myself, that system, that institution, that decision, that institution is being maligned and being brought to disrepute because of mistaken decisions from and by a handful of judges. And we cannot run away from this. Judiciary back on its course to restore the respect that Nigerians have for the judiciary, to restore the kind of holding that Nigerians had for the judiciary. When they say that the court is the hope of the common man, Nigerians deserve a resounding approach from the judiciary, from the Supreme Court, that will restore the lost glory of the judiciary. As things stand now, the judiciary is being maligned, and it's not totally unjustified, because, look, I love the provisions of the Electoral Acts, particularly the ones that ruled or presided over our elections in 2017. We cannot in any way justify a situation where someone who did not win the popular vote is given victory by the courts. The worst that should happen is a situation where the courts will order either a re-election so that you are elected by the popular mandate of the people. Nobody should become elected into any office by virtue of technicalities or by virtue of the failures in his political party. No. Elections are supposed to be the expression, popular mandate of the people. The people that are going to be ruled should have an input, in fact, the majority input in deciding and determining who will rule them. There is no way we can justify a situation where the courts now take the position of millions of votes. It should not happen. And that is what I see everywhere in the markets, in the supermarkets. When you move out, that is what the Nigerian populace is saying, that the courts have taken over the mandate of the people. The courts are now superior to millions of votes. The courts are now superior to the position of the popular people. And we cannot justify it where the votes of the people no longer count, but the decision of 3 justices will be superior to the number of votes cast at the polling booth. That should not be the case. Where, and in a country like Nigeria, where democracy is being heralded as a better option to military rule. We cannot and we should not support such a situation. And I have seen it. I have encountered it. I've seen where the popular wish of the people is. I have traveled around this country. I've been in Lagos. I've been in Enugu. I've been in Nasarawa. I've been in the Plateau. I've been in Kaduna. I've been in Kwara. And I know, I feel it. You don't need to dig deep to know what the feelings of the people is. That they voted for some people. They voted for a particular candidate. And that candidate ought to be their ruler. But the courts, unfortunately, come and say that that person should not be the person that will rule over them. And that's why there's a lot of attack on the judiciary. And we are using this opportunity to say that the Supreme Court of Nigeria, being the final arbiter, has a duty, has a responsibility, and has an opportunity to bring the Nigerian judiciary to fall in tandem and in line with the wishes of the common man. Otherwise, the judiciary will continuously be maligned. Some of us may have to go back to our farms because, like I said at the beginning, it's no longer a thing of pride to be introduced in a wedding as a lawyer, because the opinion of the populace is terribly negative against the judiciary, simply because of mistakes or wrong decisions that are recorded against the judiciary in election matters. The judiciary is doing very well in all other issues. But when it comes to election matters, the Nigerian judiciary is allowing itself to be messed up by people.
That is actually where I wanted to bring my next question from, because I have also interviewed another lawyer. I think it was Dr. Ajulo, who was arguing that Nigerians forget that day after day, week after week, Nigerian judges do render sound judgments in commercial law and on other issues of law, so that we shouldn't just use the issue of political decisions, maybe where the judges acted out of pressure from big politicians, and I use those few occasions to now condemn the judiciary, Nigerian judiciary in its entirety. What do you say to that?
I agree entirely, and I've said it. I have been an attorney general, and I know that 70 or 80% of the cases in my state were being handled by the courts, the lower courts, the customary courts, the area courts, the Sharia courts, and the high courts. But when it came to election matters, the whole polity is heated up. A handful of judges that are opportune to be chairmen and members of election tribunals take decisions or make the judiciary to become an institution of scorn, because some of the decisions cannot, and I repeat with all due respect, that some of the decisions cannot be justified in any way. You cannot find reason for the decisions. And based on judicial precedent, particularly from the Supreme Court, you cannot explain why the judges or the chairman of tribunals took the decisions they take. Unfortunately, it is the decision of this minority. I call them minority because if you calculate the number of people who are invited to be in the tribunals, they are a very insignificant minority compared to the number of judges and justices that are sitting in other cases, the commercial cases, the land disputes, the labor matters, industrial matters. And because of a handful of judges, the entire judicial system is brought to shame. And so we are looking up to the big headmaster. And I say it with every seriousness, that the Supreme Court has a duty and a chance to correct these evils. Because you cannot bring the judiciary to shame and expect that the Supreme Court would allow you to go without telling you so. And we expect that in the next few days, these issues will be corrected, where the Nigerian populace will restore confidence, will have more faith in the judicial system. And I look forward to those decisions because, honestly, as things are, the current situation of our judicial system is not palatable. Anybody who has been a lawyer, we used to be very happy to mix in this in society. We were given a lot of respect because people will say, if you want your document, your transaction to be respected, you must get a lawyer's signature. Today, I'm sorry, it's no longer like that because of the decisions that are coming out from election tribunals. Not other cases. No, election tribunals. It's election tribunals that are bringing dishonor and disrespect to the judicial system. And the Supreme Court of Nigeria must stand up and correct this anomaly. The Supreme Court can do it, and I have absolute confidence that the Supreme Court will do so. We have a few days, a few weeks, they will take this into consideration.
All right, thank you very much. Let me just ask an aside question before we bring this discussion interview to a conclusion. I just hear you say you used to be a state attorney general, and my knowledge of law says that a state attorney general can actually carry out a prosecution. Why have, in some states, actually, we see former state governors who have been roundly accused of one corruption or the other. But it appears that it's only the Federal Attorney General or the EFCC that carries out prosecution cases. So why have all these governors who always accuse their predecessors of looting and looting and looting, why have their state attorney generals not instituted any prosecution against these corrupt people? Or in fact, any prosecution at all? What are they doing, the state attorney generals?
Ogadan, you know as well as I do that from 1999 to date, most governors do not allow the democratic system to produce a governor after them. And you can see that playing out in Rivers State. Your tenure expires, you bring someone that would beat your drum and sing your song. So, and in fact, you may appoint all his commissioners, including the Attorney General. Those arrangements are made before elections take place. And as we have heard, former governors boasting that they made the current governor to be governor, so he must obey or play by the rules or by the agreement they had. So that is why when attorney generals or governors come into office, they are confronted with a fait accompli, where they are not supposed to ruffle the feathers. They are not supposed to do anything that would upset or indict their predecessor. Probably in Rivers State, we have a situation where somebody is feeling uncomfortable because the person who took over from him is the former accountant general who has been accountant general for 8 years, and he knows every kobo and how every kobo was appropriated. And that is where we have problems. But Nigerians and the Nigerian public appears to be okay with that. That people move out and they install people that will protect their interests and shield them from prosecution. That's why nothing happens to them.
Okay, thank you. We thank you very much, Mr. Jacobs, for being our guest tonight. We have another interview by 7, but it appears that Mr. Mike Omeri has a question for you. So, Mr. Omeri, you can unmute yourself before we have a short break and then allow our next guest, if he's here, to join us. So, Mr. Mike Omeri, you can unmute yourself and ask your question to our guest. Thank you. I think you are still muted, Mr. Omeri. Can you unmute yourself?
Thank you, Dan. And it's not a question, but I'm happy with what with the program. It's in relation to the behavior of the courts when it comes to adjudicating on commercial cases and other cases, and then the relationship with their behavior at election tribunals. You see, in the election tribunal, the entire country is involved. A large percentage of the population is involved. While those cases, commercial cases and so forth, may just be between individuals who have alternative or other ways of solving their problem, could be through arbitration and so forth and so on, which is not provided for in the electoral election petition process. And so people take advantage of the close, street, I would say, of the election, of the behavior of the election petition process to do whatever they choose to do. And most times, the justices themselves, like Mark Jacobs said, allow themselves to fall into the ambit of the corrupt practices that tend to pervade the atmosphere of the Nigerian culture. And this is what they should try to correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. But do you have the hope that they will correct that?
Well, it is still our country. So after all, the mantra of this government is to renew hope. So if that is what it is, let the judiciary set the precedence, because it is one of the most important pillars of democracy. And it has to uphold its own independence by itself and not to sit down and expect any other arm of government to give it to it. It has to know that it's an equal partner in the dispensation of good governance, and particularly dividends of democracy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mary. Mr. Jacobs, do you have any quick response to what Mr. Mary have just said?
Yes, quickly, I'll say that the judiciary is up to it. And that's why there are different strata and levels of the judiciary. And we are at the toppest of it. That is the Supreme Court. All the decisions, whatever their content, whatever their meaning, have to come to the Supreme Court. And that is where corrections can be made. And that's where the right thing can be done. And I am absolutely very hopeful that in the next few weeks, we'll see a clear position. The Supreme Court must put its feet down and help the judiciary to assert itself, to assert its correctness, to assert its dependability. Because unless there is faith, unless the judiciary is able to build that nexus of faith with the Nigerian people, the judiciary is in trouble.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jacobs, for sparing your time to be with us tonight. Despite the early hiccups we have, I think towards the end, your video stabilized itself and became very, very, very smooth. So I wish we could go on, but I think that is the most we can take today. We look forward to having you next time, while also hoping by that time the video will be much more stable than today. But it's been a very engaging discussion. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Mr. Omeri, for your contribution as well. We appreciate that.
Good to see you again, Dan.